Let's have a discussion about children who were raised by parents who taught their children to manipulate the system in order to benefit the parents. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. This commenter says, I was raised in this atmosphere and experienced a significant amount of abuse and neglect. 2 out of 6 of my siblings graduated high school. So far, I'm the only one that has gone to college. We endured a lot of abuse, and our reaction to that abuse was used to gain a disability diagnosis. It failed for me, but I remember being in all these evaluations. Some of us ended up medicated, forced to babysit each sibling born after the other, starving at times when my mother failed to complete the recertification periods. We only survived on school lunch. At times, we were taught to lie to Child Protective Services. The cycle only ends if we go no contact with our mother and even other siblings who make excuses for her. When I graduated high school, she told me that I needed to figure out what I'm going to do. I was homeless for 7 years because of that. I lived with friends and other family members until I was able to afford an apartment with a roommate. Living with her would mean having my finances abused because she makes up sob stories for why she needs my money. First of all, I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not surprised. And I would say I'm not surprised because I've seen this before where parents are teaching their kids, the parents are manipulating the system, and therefore they're teaching their kids to manipulate the system. These parents don't want to get up and work. They don't want to care for their kids. They look at everyone in their life as an opportunity on as an opportunity that they can benefit from. So if I have these children, I don't care, you know, how they feel or what they're going through or what their life looks like. All I'm interested in is how this child is going to babysit me, or how this child is going to benefit me. So I will have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 children if I feel like it's going to help me manipulate the system, if it's going to help me get an extra paycheck. And it's not just with biological parents either. I've seen this quite a bit um, in the foster care system. So I used to work with children many years ago, and I can't say how the system goes now in terms of what the payout is, but I know a lot of children, especially older children, are fostered out because of the check that they come with. So a lot of times children get adopted not for the love of a child, not for wanting to care for a child, but what can that child do for me? Oh, I get a check if I adopt a child. And, you know, the criteria for adopting, being able to adopt is really, really low. It's not a super high standard that you have to have, unfortunately. I mean, they do background checks to a certain degree, but, you know, anyhow, what I was going to say is a lot of times parents want to adopt a child, and you know, when children come with a specific diagnosis, a lot of times there's a bigger check that comes with a child who has a specific diagnosis. For example, I think and I hate to say it this way, but I think one of the more high paying diagnosis back in my day for a child to have, meaning that whoever fostered the child or took on the child would get a higher check for it, was HIV. So children that, certain diagnostic criteria do come with a higher check. There's disability, SSI, SSD, all these other kind of things that sort of pay out for the parents who foster a child. And I don't know what parents like that make, but it was something that you would see in the system. It was actually heartbreaking because a lot of these children would endure abuse. A lot of these children, their checks and things like that would be cashed, they wouldn't really have anything to show for it. So a lot of children would try to expedite the system and emancipate themselves as soon as they got the first opportunity. Very similar to what you were saying, like, you graduated, you were homeless, you were doing what you had to do. These children do the same thing. And they would rather do foster care in a lot of cases, not all the time, but foster care because, they wanted out of the system so bad. They didn't want to go to another group home. They didn't want to be put in another juvenile facility and things like that. So, they kind of have to pick the lesser of the evils. And so they put up with a lot of that. But sometimes, they would come back to the group home, but they and I've done posts on this, a lot of the kids were able to pick up on parents, foster parents who were predators right from the jump. But they said, you know what, I'm gonna try it because I want out of this facility so bad. Let me try it and see if I can just hack it. And, a lot of times they wouldn't be able to make it a weekend or two, before they come back, because there's too much touching and feeling and just inappropriate abusive behavior going on, but also too, the money. Sometimes, parents would lock food up, and you can't, it's against the law to lock up food. At least it was here in California. So you couldn't put locks on refrigerators and stuff like that. Community care licensing would really crack down on that type of stuff. You also couldn't withhold devices. You're not supposed to withhold devices and things like that. And just, all that kind of stuff. But, there are parents, unfortunately, that see their children as a paycheck, that see their children as a tool for manipulation, a tool to manipulate the system and maximize the amount of benefits. And unfortunately, they don't care what type of medication you got to be on. They'll have you lie and do that. And I've even had women in my dissertation study who talked about that. I mean, and it goes beyond just the system too. They would have their children lie to their fathers if their fathers weren't together. Daddy, I need money for this. Make up something. Lie to your grandparents. Lie to the church. Things like that. So just lie to everybody. So they're teaching their children to, manipulate the system and everybody else around, just so that they can, take from their children. And it gets, I've seen it get real extreme here. So this is one scenario, but I've seen it get really bad to whereas, parents will have their children lie so bad that, the person that they're lying on, they might be facing some real charges on account of that kind of stuff. So it can get real ugly. And I've seen that, that happens in family courts and things, high conflict divorces and things like that, to whereas, parents, have their children who make false allegations and do all kinds of things. So coaching and all of that, that's very real, is also not uncommon. So this happens quite all the time. And again, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but thanks so much for bringing this up. And let's have a conversation about it.